Hello and welcome to all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world news cycle on Global Television, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Ramsey Enoch Agbo. A quick reminder that Global Television is on DSTV channel 365 and Star Times channel 276. Now the news in full. Nigeria today stood in solemn reflection as the nation honors its fallen heroes at the 2026 Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day, marked by an emotional parade and wreath-laying ceremony at the National Arcade in Abuja. Kikelomo Okere has the details.
At the National Arcade in Abuja, silence filled the air as memories of sacrifice and service took center stage. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who was represented by the Vice President Kashim Shettima, led the country in paying tribute to officers and men of the Nigerian Armed Forces who paid the ultimate price in defense of the nation. The ceremony began with laying of wreath, first by the Vice President on behalf of the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, followed by leaders of the National Assembly and the Judiciary, service chiefs, veterans, and families of the fallen heroes. A minute of silence followed as prayers were offered for the repose of the souls of the departed and for peace, unity, and security across the country. In a deep symbolic moment, white pigeons were released by the Vice President into the sky, representing peace, hope, freedom, and nation's collective prayers that the sacrifice of the fallen heroes will lead to lasting unity and security in Nigeria. As the pigeons soared, many in attendance watched in quiet reflection, some holding back tears. The solemn mood then transitioned into the military parade as the contingent of the Nigerian Army, Navy, and Air Force marched with discipline and precision. A powerful reminder that the spirit of the fallen lives on through those still in service. For families of the fallen heroes, the ceremony was both painful and proud, a national acknowledgement that their loved ones are remembered and honored. As the last-minute salute was rendered, Nigeria renewed its vows never to forget the courage, sacrifice, and service of its fallen heroes. Kikelomo Okere, Global Television News.
The Trade Union Congress, that is TUC, has thrown its weight behind the ongoing strike by the joint health sector unions, JOHESO, and rejected the federal government's enforcement of the no work, no pay policy. In a statement jointly signed by its president Festus Osifo and Secretary General Nuhu Toro, TUC described the stoppage of salaries as unacceptable, accusing the government of undermining ongoing negotiation and worsening the hardship faced by health workers amid rising economic pressure. The Congress warned that continued intimidation of JOHESO members could trigger a nationwide industrial action. An Abuja High Court has struck out the criminal charges instituted by the federal government against the lawmaker representing Kogi Central, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Odoahan, effectively bringing to an end a high-profile legal battle that sparked national debates. Court records show that the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation filed a notice of discontinuance, prompting the court to formally strike out the criminal defamation and related charges that had been earlier preferred against the senator. The case, which attracted intense public scrutiny, stemmed from comments alleged made by Akpoti-Odoahan during a televised interview. The prosecution of the matter had generated sustained debate around freedom of expression, political accountability, and the limit of prosecutorial powers in a democratic setting. The Federal Capital Territory Administration has announced a plan to begin selling properties and revoking land titled over unpaid ground rents, C-of-O fees, and land use compensation charges from next week. The exercise will target properties illegally converted from residential to commercial use in high-profile areas of Wuse and Garki, where owners have failed to meet payment obligations. Officials say the 2026 enforcement will be broader than last year's operation and aimed at restoring compliance with planning and land administration laws. President Bola Tinubu has congratulated Nigerian artists who emerged winner at the 9th edition of the All-African Music Awards, that is AFRIMA, describing their success as evidence of the continued growth and global recognition of Nigeria's creative industry. In a statement released by the State House, the president praised the artists for making the country proud on a continental stage, noting that their achievements reflect the creativity, resilience, and talent of Nigerian youths, as well as the country's growing influence in Africa and global music. Nigeria recorded a strong showing at the award, which held from January 7 to 11, 2026 in Lagos. The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, that is NDLEA, has intensified efforts to curb the supply and abuse of hard drugs in the country, with deployment of officers across Nigeria's land, sea, and air borders to intercept illicit drug coming into the country. The Deputy Commander General and Director, Asset and Financial Investigation of the agency, Dr. Ibrahim Abdul, disclosed this in an exclusive interview with Global Television. Zarau Nasir reports.
As Nigeria puts up a tough fight against drug abuse, cartels and patrons are busy adjusting their tactics in circumventing security agencies and the hurdles set by the law. What are the implications of this reality? We find out in this report.
Drug abuse, particularly among youths, has continued to pose a serious threat to public health, national productivity, and social stability in Nigeria. Experts warn that early exposure to hard drugs increases the risk of addiction and long-term health challenges, with far-reaching physical, mental, social, and economic consequences. Medical professionals further link drug abuse to mental health disorders, noting that young people who abuse drugs are more vulnerable to depression, anxiety, personality disorders, and other behavioral problems. In response, the National Drugs Law Enforcement Agency says it has strengthened its strategy to cut off the supply of illicit drugs at source. The Deputy Commander General and Director of Assets and Financial Investigation, Dr. Ibrahim Abdul, explains that NDLEA officers have been strategically deployed to land borders, seaports, and airports to monitor and intercept drugs being smuggled into and out of the country.
Whatever NDLEA is doing is by virtue of what Section 3 of the NDLEA Act Cap N30 provided. The agency that has the sole responsibility of tackling hard drugs in Nigeria, to the exclusion of all other law enforcement agencies, NDLEA. And that is why we put in place officers in land, sea, and air borders to check drugs coming and going out of the country, and also officers in state commands and also strategic locations in this country.
Dr. Abdul says beyond enforcement, the agency is also intensifying preventive measures, especially among youths. He explains that traditional rulers and religious leaders have been integrated into NDLEA sensitization programs to help educate communities on the dangers of drug abuse. These structures, he says, are aimed at grassroots sensitization and early intervention to discourage drug abuse and related crimes.
There are so many things put in place by NDLEA under the leadership of General Marwa. First, we have the war against drug abuse, which is a tackle, which is meant for doing advocacies to so many places to sensitize people on the dangers and menaces of drug abuse. through the usage of traditional institutions, teachers in schools, religious leaders, and so many other sectors of the society.
As the NDLEA intensifies border surveillance and community engagement, stakeholders say sustained awareness and collective responsibility remain key to protecting Nigeria's youth from the dangers of drug abuse. Zahra Nasr, reporting for Global TV.
You're watching the live broadcast of News Cycle. When News Cycle returns after this weather forecast.
Hello, you're welcome.
Welcome back from that break. Let's get to the world of business, where the federal government has directed banks and fintech companies to begin collecting and remitting 7.5% VAT on selected electronic banking service charges from January 19, 2026. The tax will apply to transaction fees such as transfers, USSD charges, and card issuance, while interest on savings and deposit remains exempt. Officials say the move is aimed at standardizing value-added tax collection across digital financial platforms and boosting government revenue. The federal government has warned prospective investors in the 2025 oil licensing round that any errors, miscalculations, or disappointments arising from the bidding process will be borne entirely by the companies involved, stressing that there will be no refunds of signature bonuses or exchanges of oil assets under any circumstances. The warning was issued by the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Oil, Henneken Lokpobiri at the 2025 Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission's pre-bid conference held in Lagos. The conference, which attracted a large turnout both physically and online, was aimed at educating prospective bidders on available assets, the legal framework, and the risk involved in the licensing process. The minister said the era when oil licenses were acquired for speculation, prestige, or resale is over, adding that licenses are government assets that must be actively developed. The Dangote Petroleum Refinery has commenced nighttime loading operations as it intensifies efforts to sustain a daily supply of more than 50 million liters of premium motor spirit petrol across Nigeria, signaling a major shift to full 24-hour operations at Africa's largest refinery. Speaking during a press briefing at the refining, the managing director, David Baird, said the transition to round-the-clock loading had become necessary to meet market demand and improve turnaround time for product evacuation. He said the refinery is now meeting the 50 million liters daily petrol requirement in both production and evacuation, noting that the move comes as the refinery continues to ramp up production, stabilize logistics, and strengthen fuel security, while countering speculations around maintenance activities and supply disruptions. Ibom LNG and Logistic Base Limited has secured a $700 million financing deal with Sekuro Investment Group to develop a 100 million standard cubic feet per day liquefied natural gas facility in Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. The signing took place at Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week, positioning the state as strategic hub for LNG production and downstream industrial growth. The agreement, executed as Memorandum of Understanding and financing term sheet, drew top government and financial officials, highlighting strong regulatory and institutional support for Nigeria's gas-led industrialization agenda. The facility, when completed, is expected to generate jobs, enhance domestic energy security, promote cleaner fuel substitution, and boost regional export, driving both economic and developmental impacts. The project reflects growing global collaboration between Nigeria, the UAE, Canada, and international investors in large-scale, bankable energy infrastructure. And now on the foreign scene, Uganda's opposition leader, Bobi Wine, says he would call for protests if incumbent President Yoweri Museveni rigs this week's election. Wine also stated that he would welcome an intervention by the United States, acknowledging the protests are likely to provoke more crackdown. Uyi Agbomofuewe brings us details. We'll bring you that report in our subsequent bulletin. The United States has completed its first sale of Venezuelan oil, generating about $500 million, marking the first major energy transaction since Washington's recent intervention in Venezuela. The development follows a dramatic U.S. military operations in Caracas earlier this month that led to the capture of President Nicolas Maduro and reshaped relations between both countries. A U.S. official says the sale is part of a broader $2 billion agreement, with more oil sales expected in the coming days as the U.S. begins marketing Venezuela's crude under its supervision. Under the new framework, Washington plans to supervise the sale of 30 to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil crude, tapping into the country's vast oil reserve, the largest proven in the world at about 303 billion barrels. Israeli military has carried out an attack on a village in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley amid growing concern of wider Israel escalation as the government pursues for the disarmament of Lebanese group Hezbollah. In a social media post, Israel Army spokesman told residents of the village of Solmo to leave their homes ahead of a planned strike of a building he claimed contained Hezbollah military infrastructure. The Israeli military later said it was attacking several Hezbollah targets across Lebanon without specifying where exactly the strike were being carried out. Israel has launched near-daily attack on Lebanon despite a ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah that came into force in late 2024. And now to the world of sport, where the Athletic Federation of Nigeria has imposed wide-ranging sanctions on athletes, coaching, and two state athletes association following the conclusion of a special investigation into the age falsification involving competitors at the 2025 African Under-18 and Under-20 Championships held in Abeokuta. In a memorandum titled Recommendation of Sanctions and Reprimands for Athletes, Coaches, Administrators, and States Involved in the IAU Age Cheating Inquiry, addressed to the AFN President and Executive Board, the committee stated that several athletes have registered and competed with multiple dates of birth without any legitimate explanation. The panel, constituted on December 9, 2025, was set up to examine allegations of age discrepancies among young Nigerian athletes flagged by the Authentic Integrity Unit of World Athletic on December 2nd, 2025. Defending champions Super Falcons of Nigeria have been drawn in Group C of the 2026 Women's African Cup of Nations with Zambia, Egypt, and Malawi. Group C games will be played in Casablanca. Nigeria thrashed Zambia 5-0 in the quarter-final of the 2024 edition, which was also hosted by Morocco. English Premier League side West Ham United have stepped up their interest in Nigerian midfielder Tochukwu Nadi, who is currently on international duty with the Super Eagles at the 2025 African Cup of Nations in Morocco. According to Sports Boom, West Ham officials have already held discussions with Nadi's representatives while he is in Nigeria's AFCON camp in Morocco. West Ham have been tracking Nadi for several months following a series of impressive performances for the Belgium side. And that's it on News Cycle. A quick reminder that Global TV is on DSTV channel 365 and StarTimes channel 276. Kindly follow us across all social media platforms now showing on your screen using @GlobalTVNG. I am Ramsey Enoch Agbo. Thanks for watching.
Hello, you're welcome to the weather forecast for Friday. An improvement is expected in the weather condition across the country, as moderate dust haze is expected in the north and north-central region. However, poorer visibilities are expected in parts of Zamfara, Katsina, Kano, and Jigawa states, where horizontal visibilities are likely to reduce to 1,000 meters or less. Over the southern parts of the country, increased moisture influx combined with lingering dust particles is expected to serve as a particulate matter leading to cloud buildup. And as a result, partly cloudy skies is expected in the southern parts of the country, with chances of morning thunderstorms in parts of Cross River and Akwa Ibom states. We advise motorists, individuals with respiratory conditions to please take necessary precaution. We also advise our airline operators to visit our eFlight folder portal for regular weather updates. Stay with us for the temperature forecast. I am Theodora Itum. Thank you for watching.